crack. Tom and Jack having a crack.
Welcome to another episode of Tom and Jack Having the Crack. Every week we sit down with a new comic, have some crack. This week, live from Paris, wonderful Sadra Sumner.
Hello, thanks for having me, guys.
How you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing great. It's gloomy Paris, so I'm happy to be in my apartment, all like cuddled up here.
Oh yeah, nothing better. Like I think Paris is one of those cities though. It still looks quite nice when it's grey. Like
True.
some cities don't. Some cities need a bit of sunshine and a bit of bright light to turn it on.
Yeah. The dangerous thing about Paris is when it rains and it gets kind of gloomy like this, all of the dog shit that's on the sidewalk just turns into slip and slides. So you gotta watch where you're going.
Euro Disney's latest attraction.
It's free.
It's free. Come on, kids. I already spent $200 on Space Mountain. You're getting on that shit.
I mean, the kids would be like, yeah, we could play this at home too, Dad. This is great.
Yeah, and you're gonna. So as you can probably hear from Sadra's accent, you're not natively Parisian.
I am not. I am trying to be a citizen here, but I am originally from Pennsylvania in the States.
So when did you move over? What caused the move? How's comedy working over there?
Yeah, great questions. I moved over in 2008, so next year it'll be 15 years that I'm here. And I originally moved over to work as a tour guide, and then I just kind of stayed working as a tour guide, and got into comedy very late. Got into comedy in 2019, and it was all a whirlwind because obviously the world shut down in 2020. And at that time, I didn't have enough of an attachment to it where I was like, oh my goodness, my hobby is shut down. I was just like, okay, comedy was fun for a while. I'm going to take a break. And then I think after COVID, got back into it and have watched as the scene has really built up in Paris. The English speaking comedy scene is really building up in Paris. A lot more people started in 2019. A lot of people started in 2021 when things started opening up again. And it's been really fun to see new shows pop up, to see new comedians come onto the scene, to see more people move here. There's constantly people who are like, I want to move to Paris. I'm an expat. I'm a student. I'm a XYZ. And it's just becoming a really nice, vibrant scene. And then also, you know, Tom, having you come over and having other people come over from other cities, there's just really nice, like internal traveling comedian circuit in Europe. Where, you know, Amsterdam, London, Barcelona, Berlin, like all of these major cities, you sort of get to know the comedians who are on the English circuit there. So that's been super fun to have Paris be included with that.
Yeah. I mean, even in the brief time I've been going, it feels like it's grown exponentially in the last 18 months. Yeah,
it definitely. So I run a show called Cuckoo Comedy, and we just started doing 2 shows last night. And we added on another show on Sundays like last week, so it is very fresh.
Yeah. Because Jack, you're going. Well, we're both going to be there at the same time, aren't we? In December
the 9th and 10th. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I honestly don't know what to expect. Like I'd imagine it's just the same, though, is it?
Have you done? Well, not really. Have you done comedy?
You're telling jokes to people in English who understand English.
So it's different around. Well, Cedric, I'd love to know what you think about this. I think from different European cities, it depends on their conceptions of English cultures. So American and England and Ireland. It depends on their fluency of English, and it depends how they got into stand-up, I think. Right. So like, I would say, well, you go ahead, Cedric, but I would say like French audiences, they love it when you take the piss out of France. They're quite big on like language jokes because they've all had to learn English. But things that are maybe more what we would think of as like Saturday night jokes they can be a bit more like
over their head, is it?
Well, yeah, but let's not say that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is telling jokes to English. The bit about like comprehension is always a questionable one. Like we've had people come to our shows, sit in the front row, and then proceed to translate the entire show to their friend.
Oh yeah,
because their friend doesn't speak English, and they're not even necessarily French. You know, they're from all over. So that's kind of frustrating. You're like, this isn't really going to work out, right? Like they're not going to catch on to it. But then just references, and I have a lot of American references, and I'm sure you guys experience this as well. Like you come over here and you kind of throw out something like cultural from your upbringing and it just falls flat. Like I had a joke one time. I was like, C-SPAN, you guys know? And they're like, see what? Which is the really boring government public networking channel in the US.
Yeah.
It just, it doesn't work. And so you sit down to write these jokes and you're sitting, you're like, oh, this is really funny. And you don't even think like people aren't going to get this. And then the same's true in America when I go to do jokes over there. I had a joke about a Minitel once. And do you guys know what a Minitel is?
Minitel.
It's
Mini
like
call? A beeper.
Unless it's a tiny
A
hotel.
beeper.
It's a very small hotel. No, it was like the original computer and it was French, but it was like back in the 70s or 80s. And we learned about it in French class. And I thought I had this like brilliant joke. I don't even remember what the joke was, but I was in Austin, Texas. And I was like, like the Minitel. And they were like, the mini what? We don't have anything mini around here. I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. So besides all the stuff of, like changing the cultural references, it's speaking slower. I'm also a very fast talker. I have to remember to slow down on stage. And it's a good exercise in finding relatable content, which I know as comedians we're always trying to do anyway, but relatable to a very different and constantly changing demographic of people.
University.
Right? Because we can figure out that most people who come to our shows are going to be like 18 to 40 something. They could be from the States, they could be from Canada, they could be from Brazil, they could be from Germany. Like it's just finding that common thread. And it's a bit harder, but it's also a really good exercise. And ultimately, like I think it makes you a better comic.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think there's a bit of that. There's some places in London that are quite touristy. The audience tends to be from kind of all over. I once seen a guy in London. It's quite funny. Guy from the north of England who is a brilliant comedian. But I once seen him do a routine about working in a call center to about 30 people, and I would say out of the 30 people, about 25 were rich Arabs who I think didn't know what a call center was. Certainly had never worked in one or knew anyone who worked in one. And it was a great routine, but I could tell they hadn't a clue what he was talking about.
Yeah.
It just fell flat.
Do you know what it reminded me of, Jack, actually? Like some nights when we're doing Edinburgh, there'd be some nights where you're like the Italian tourist night, or like just some nights where people were in who either didn't watch a lot of comedy, didn't speak a lot of English, some combination of both. And you just have to like, right, I've got to find a way to connect with these people about what they are interested in.
But that's where you get like that is great for material, because I think putting parameters on yourself helps.
Yeah, no, for sure it does. And it's helped me get better at recognizing the crowd, even when they sit down before the show even starts, and figuring out like, okay, that person looks like they're from Spain, that person looks like they're from Germany, that person's definitely French, 100% French. And yeah, like you said, Tom, like the French love being made fun of, and it's so easy to make fun of them just with gestures, like like that's just so French. And so you can get a really easy laugh, but at the same time you don't want to beat a dead horse. You don't want to go into every single routine just saying like, okay, I'm going to make fun of the French, not really doing any jokes, but just making fun of them physically for a minute. Because that can be fun for a crowd if they're French, but it gets really exhausting for the other comedians who constantly see you do shows. And it's just not, for me, it's not like fulfilling personally. So I do really try to craft jokes that are going to be like passe-partout, as they would say in French, like all encompassing.
Yeah.
All encompassing. Okay.
Because because obviously your French is, fantastic, fluent. Do you do French comedy as well? Or are you just doing English?
I did French comedy once and it was fine. It was just fine, but it's not my heart. Like my heart's not in it.
Because that's so interesting. Because a friend of ours, you met Frances Keaton, right? When she was over?
Yeah.
So Frances just went over and did her first French set.
Yeah, I saw her last week.
Yeah. And did you watch her set?
I didn't see the set, but I saw her afterwards.
Because she's done one. My goal is to do one in French next year. Like 5 minutes, be able to do a 5-minute set by the end of next year. But it's interesting. So when you say your heart's not in it, is that just because we've talked about how weird the French sense of humor is? Is it part of that? Is that part of it, or is it a different reason?
So first of all, my goal is never to be a famous French stand-up comedian. So it kind of seems like I'm putting in the hours at the wrong job.
Mm.
The other part is that I know that my jokes work in English because of the mannerisms that I've crafted to go along with them, and I can think on my feet quickly. If somebody responds, I can like get back. I don't have that ease in French, so I think that's just, I could summarize that as fear. Like I don't think I would be as good, and I know that, and my French friends have been like, of course you won't be as good. That's not your native language, but that's okay. But then the other part is, a lot of French friends have said, if you just translate your jokes from English, it'll work in French. But I just don't believe that. I don't think that the nuances are the same. French humor is very different from American humor or British humor. Again, cultural references, mannerisms, just the way you are on stage, it doesn't translate. So I think I will probably do it again, because it keeps coming up, and I feel like I need to give it another chance, but it's not something that I ultimately want to pursue. And then I look at people like Eddie Izzard, right? Who's fantastic and who has made a living out of like doing it in both languages. And I'm like, it's funny because I look at him and I'm like, I would never be able to get to that level. But then I look at American comics who I really admire, and I'm like, if I work really hard, I can be that. I'm like, I only have enough talent and energy to do it in one language, I think is the answer.
I think that's very honest. That's a very like honest assessment. I mean, it might change as you develop, right? Like you might in 5 years, you might feel differently.
Yeah. I think if I started when I was younger, I would have done it, but I just feel old and tired now.
I don't know if it's true, but I heard Eddie Izzard is not funny in French.
Oh.
That's what I heard. That's the
clip. That's the clip for the week.
English, but he's not actually funny in French.
Interesting. So there's a famous French comedian called Gad Elmaleh. Do you guys know him? He's been equated to Seinfeld of France.
Yeah.
And he did a whole thing where he went to the US and he tried to do it in English, and it didn't go well. He got like some laughs, but he definitely wasn't able to make a career out of it the same way he's made in France. And I also look at examples like that and I'm like, I don't know why you would put energy into something when you can have so much success in this other thing. That's my takeaway.
Yeah.
I did see a German guy once though, who seemingly is very big in Germany and does comedy in German. And I saw him do a small gig in England in English, and he was class. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
But I suppose like it's hard to know, isn't it? It depends. I suppose there's a lot of factors to it. How do you say French humor is different? Like how do you mean it's different? I lived with a French family when I was 14. And I remember the movie. Do you remember the Dennis the Menace movie?
Yeah.
Right. He watched that in my house, and then he bought it in the airport, and they watched it over and over for the 3 weeks I stayed with them. And do you know the scene where they all eat beans and they fart?
Yeah.
Even at 14, I didn't think much of that scene. They fucking loved that scene. Like the whole family. And I remember just thinking, this is bizarre. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very slapsticky. It's also very story prone. So I actively try to not watch French comedy, but when I have to, they'll tell a story for 5 minutes with one punchline. It's very old school humor, like two guys walk into a bar and then they tell this whole big story, and it's a punchline at the end.
So the punchline is usually
I might do well.
the punchline is usually like, and they didn't have the right change, so they had to leave. And everyone's like, there isn't quite often there isn't like a misdirection or like a clever thing. It's kind of like Claude and Pierre were in the bar. They tried to get the red wine. Claude didn't have any money. They had to leave. They had to go to
another bar.
Yeah, that's it.
You're like, okay, you're like, all right, well, there's a million of them right down the street. They all look the same, so I'm sure they sorted it out. But yeah, I can't really wrap my mind around it. I mean, which makes sense because it would be weird if I was like, oh yeah, I totally understand French humor, having not grown up here, and I have lived here for a while, but it's not like my culture. Don't tell the French officials that, because I'm trying to tell them that I've adopted it as my culture, so I get citizenship. Yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I think about doing comedy over here in English as sort of like playing in the minor leagues. So like in the States, you have like Major League Baseball, and you can also play on what we call the farm team, which is like not as talented, or maybe just like younger players that haven't been drafted yet. And then sometimes in other sports, they'll have like European leagues, like the NFL has European leagues, and if they're not good enough to get drafted in the NFL, they'll come over here and they'll play for a while. I think of the English circuit in Europe as kind of the farm team or like the European team. Like you work it out here and you get good, and then you go back to the place where you can do it in English, be that London, America, wherever.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. The interesting thing as well is that I think the quality of that makes sense, that analogy. Then the one thing I think you do get in European cities compared to like London or New York, because I want to ask about your recent New York trip as well.
Oh yeah.
The quality of stage time you're getting in Europe is so high.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Every open mic is 30, 50 people, real audience members that you're performing to, and you can do that 4 or 5 times a week.
Yep.
And in London, it takes so long. I mean, Jack, I don't know what you think, but in London, it takes a long time, I think, until you're performing in front of 50 people 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah, you could. Well, I suppose to see in London, if you have a lot of friends, you can perform to 30 to 50 people every night if you've got a bringer.
Yeah.
You know, I just bit the bullet in that. So I was doing 2 of those gigs a week and then watching 2 of them. If that makes sense. I was doing a bringer swap.
Yeah.
You know, but it was irritating and frustrating.
Yeah.
Because these guys get in, I think the same's true in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, like all these big European cities. They when you start, like I did a gig with a kid who was like 2 months in. He was actually really good, but he was like 2 months in. Yeah. He was like, oh, small crowd tonight. It was only like 30, 40 people. You know, hopefully next time you come, there'll be more people.
Sweetheart.
Yeah.
Be grateful for what you have.
Yeah. So, but I think you're right as well, Sadra, in the sense that London and New York, or you know, those more established markets, they push you a lot harder as a comic.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because you know, in like a place like New York, it's just a game of numbers. There are more mics every single night. To get on those mics is harder. Whereas when I started in Paris, there were like 2 good shows happening, and I felt like it was kind of hard to get on there then. But now I've been part of the scene to build them up. And like I mentioned, like I produce a show with my friend now as well. And so many other of my colleagues of people who started at the same time as me or just a little bit before me have started shows. So we're creating our own scene. So that's really fun because we can kind of make it the way that we want to make it. And you're right. Every single visiting comic from the States says that every open mic here is a showcase over there. Yeah. And I'm like, that's amazing. So it's like our base level of the number of people we have come and the quality of the show is already a little bit higher. And we don't have 14 mics a night that we could hop on, but I can get like 2 or 3 a week if I try like a little bit. And if I try a little bit harder, I'm sure that I could get a mic almost every night of the week, which is great. It's great. I will say the one thing about the States, I was traveling there in April and then more recently, like when I was in Austin, Texas, I was doing 2 or 3 mics a night. And that just helps you progress as a comic so much. But they were also mics where there were 5 people in the audience sometimes. So you're saying your jokes over again and you're kind of sorting it out the wording. But the mannerisms, the persona that I can develop on stage here when I have more people and I have more reactions and I can kind of play off the audience, completely different part of developing. So I'm in this grind right now where I really enjoy doing a couple months in Europe and then going back to the States or going somewhere else and seeing different crowds and kind of working on honing different aspects of my comedic skills, if you will, with different audiences and different venues.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I feel very lucky that I have London as a base, keeps you humble. Yeah. Keep you humble, kicks your ass a lot. Yeah. And you learn how good, you know, can you play really tough rooms, you know, going up and down England. But then you also get to come to Europe and develop a different side of yourself, like you're saying, which is you get to play to bigger audiences more often. Which I think having both those things in parallel is quite a good little system.
Yeah. The last show that I did in New York, I sat down and I started chatting with the girl who was another comic and saying like, how long have you been doing it? How long have you been doing it? And she's like, oh, I've been doing it for 2 months. And it was your friend, Tom. And
Emmy.
Yeah, Emmy. Yeah. And I was like 2 months. And then I looked at the lineup and I was last in the lineup and I was like, she's only been doing it for 2 months. I was like, I'm going to kill at this gig. Like, this is amazing. And then the first woman gets up And I look her up on Instagram and she has 90,000 followers and she kills. And then I was like, I'm going to bomb this gig. And America just plays, New York especially plays with your emotions so much because you're just like, where do I rank? Oh, I'm up here. Oh no, 2 seconds later. Oh, I'm way down here. I'm way down here on the comedic like lineup.
Yeah.
So that was definitely like keeping me humble for sure.
I keep telling Jack, I would love Jack to go to New York. I think, well, A, I think you'd kill over there. And B, I think it's that you're so like, you've got that competitive edge in you. And like, it's a great city for that. Because even at smaller shows, when I was in October, there was people who were doing the Comedy Cellar, doing a gig I was doing at Tiny Cupboard. And they kill so hard that you're like,
yeah.
Wow. All right. We're going to have to big boys on to try and like, get something going in a room. Like you just see 3 people absolutely murder. They come off and like, I flopped the punchline on this one. This one wasn't that great. That new material's not working. You're like, people are crying. I don't know how you could kill it any harder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a mix, such a diverse mix over there. And you're like, and it's so good. It's so easy to like mingle and mix with comics who have been doing it for years and have really honed their skills and really care about it. Like people who are trying to get better by doing those shows with 2 and 3 people. And it's just, I don't know, it was super inspiring for me to be like, wow, this is all extremely accessible. Like, I don't know, I've never wanted to be like an actress or anything, but I imagine if you had that sort of mentality, you might go to Los Angeles and then see somebody and be like, oh my gosh, that's insert actress name who's famous right now. I don't know. That's amazing. And that's how I felt in New York, except I could actually go have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That to me just like blew my mind.
You're gonna go.
No, you guys don't have any love for
no.
comedians.
I do completely. I just see Jack was like mulling over something.
No, do you know, I have an interesting one here because last week I did a gig called Rats. Do you know Rats?
Mm-mm.
Have you done it? Yeah. Then Rats, it's in King's Cross, right? And it's a terrible gig, but like I knew it'd be a terrible gig. It's a gig where you'll go and there might be 12 comedians, and if you're lucky, there might be some audience, but there might not. And I think when I did it tonight, I did it in the first half, there was 2 real audience. And in the second half, I think there was 5, right? But I showed up and I do like those gigs because they really are the best place to start with material because you've got nothing. It's very hard to get any laughter out of it. And when I got there, Stephen Catlin said to me, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be at a gig like this, right? And do you know who showed up and did the gig? Sam Campbell, who just won Edinburgh.
Really? He just won the Edinburgh.
He just won and did it. And nobody did well, right? Let's be honest about it. Nobody did well, but he did better than everybody else. You know what I mean? So it was good to see that even, like it would have been harder to tell the difference between people, but like I think those gigs really are, they're the equivalent of sports players, doing army training or something, just being in an environment where it's like you just have to really dig deep to try and find something. But usually if you can find something in those rooms, it then can become something special,
Absolutely. No, you're right.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about figuring out where people are coming from, what their demographic is, what they're going to appreciate. The other thing I love about going back and doing comedy in the States is that, so I did it in Atlanta in April, and then more recently in New York City, and Las Vegas also had a little bit of this, but there were rooms where it was just 95% Black people.
Okay.
And I walk into those rooms and I'm like, I got jokes. I got jokes about being from Pennsylvania, farmer town.
Yeah.
I got jokes about being like an older white woman. Like I don't have anything in common with these people. And I used to get really intimidated about that. And then more recently I did a show in New York where it was a bar show and there was a family having a birthday party, and it was all Black people who were between the ages of like 40 and 50, I would say. And they were basically sitting on the stage where the show was happening, having a birthday party. And I was like, I'm going to bomb. I'm going to bomb. I'm going to bomb. I'm going to bomb. And I just like got ready for it. And then I went up and then I just fully leaned into who I was. and was just exactly like this quirky, weird white girl who lives abroad, and they fucking loved it. They were like howling, and then that was great. And I was like, okay, it like restored my faith, and just be the best version of yourself. Don't try to be anything else. And you might have gigs like this where you bomb, but at least like you're being true to yourself, you know?
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know what Jack think. I think if you bomb being yourself, people will still like you.
Yeah.
And B, you probably got closer to unlocking some material and act out or something than if you were trying to cater to the room. I remember the first black room I did in New York, I bombed so hard because I tried to like, I don't know. I mean, you can tell by the sweater, there's no chance I'm ever going to be cool. But like, oh, I'm wearing a Cosby sweater. But like I just tried too hard, basically. Like on a date, I just tried too hard. Second time I went up there, just leaned into Harry Potter references, and people were like, yeah, that is, you're a corny white boy. That is exactly what you are. And it went. It was like a nice lesson in. If you're as close to yourself as you can be, you're probably not going to do as badly as you would if you like just tried to cater to the room too hard.
Yeah, give them permission to make fun of you by making fun of yourself a little bit. And I love self-deprecating comedy. I don't think that any comic should only do that. I think there needs to be like some intelligence to your jokes. You need to sit down and write some things, like opinions on things that you have. But yeah, if you kick off the room by saying like, it's okay to make fun of me, I realize I don't fit here. I realize I'm ruining your evening by taking this microphone. That's nice. But yeah, that was fun. It was super fun.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if Jack had any similar experience.
Not really. Yeah, not really. Like my kind of, if I'm unsure, I always think I just heighten the energy, and I just always think that people will always have some bit of sympathy or generosity for someone. I think people like a trier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just go over the top with the energy, and I find doing high energy is always the most enjoyable for me. So even if it's ridiculous, you usually get, like, even if it's ridiculous and it doesn't work, you usually get a bit of a laugh at, you know, the realization that it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? I just think people like, I just think people will always give you the benefit of the doubt if you overcommit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like you say, if that's the mode where you find you're enjoying yourself the most, they're going to feel that you're enjoying it.
Yeah. And there's something about it, you know, it's that bit of daring as well. I always, you know, I talk about it a lot though, but I do like when you go on stage and you straight away cross a kind of a line that shows that you've got a bit of bravery, that like, I think there's something exciting about watching that. There's something very exciting about doing that too, because it's terrifying to do that.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think when it's weird, because like when the conditions are really right is when you kind of need to do the least, and when the conditions are really good is when you need to do the most. You know,
it's true.
And the thing again is true. Like, I think at the start you're so desperate for stage time, you will just perform anywhere.
Yeah.
But after a while you become a bit more snobby about places, and actually you shouldn't, because it's those difficult ones that's actually where stuff comes out. You know. Where you go off script and you ramble a bit more.
What won't kill you makes you stronger.
That's the downside of having such good quality stage time for you guys all the time. Is I would imagine it's very tempting just to like kill, or it's just very tempting just to want to do well because there's 50 people out there. So you do treat it more like a show. Whereas when you do Brixton Comedy Club with a mouse, or you do it in the Rats or whatever, then.
How do you feel when you bomb? Like when you bomb bad, like how does it? Because I remember the very first time I bombed. Like, you know, no one bombs the first time to do comedy.
Yeah.
And like you sort of get. I remember you kind of get going, and you're doing a couple of gigs and you haven't bombed yet, but it's like it's in the back of your mind. It's a cloud, and then you start deluding yourself, thinking, well, maybe I'm one of these people who never bombs.
Oh, the lie we've all told ourselves.
And I remember the first time I like really, really bombed badly, like where I was really trying and I bombed bad. And I remember just thinking it actually felt funny. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't think it felt that badly. I think it looks a lot worse to watch. I'd much rather bomb myself than watch someone bomb. I think it's very awkward to watch, but I don't think it actually feels that bad.
I had an interesting, I guess, comedic upbringing with bombing. We used to do a show on a boat, and it was a place called the Jardin Sauvage. I don't know if you ever performed there, Tom. And they've since moved. But right before the showcase show, there was an open mic, and it was called the Wild Open Mic. And it was so much fun because it was like Sunday evening at 5 p.m. and it was all the comedians, and almost everyone bombed because there were only comedians in the audience. And so you might get like a huh, or like a like laugh, but that was it. And we went every week for the hang afterwards, but we knew that we were going to bomb. And so you went up there and you tried a bunch of stuff, and you knew it, but you knew that everyone else bombed too. And it just became like routine, which it could be a dangerous routine to get into because you don't want to be like, oh, I know I'm just going to bomb, I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
But it was encouraging afterwards to have comics come up to me and be like, this one bit that you said, work on that, throw out the rest of it, like just do that. And that was this really like collaborative scene that was developing in Paris when I was first starting.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that difference between a mic and a show bombing is interesting.
You know Luke, Tom?
Yeah.
Luke Charles. He always says he thinks that a bomb is when you just get little tittles of laughter throughout, but not like a really big laugh or not continuous laugh. He's like, that for me is a bomb. It's sympathy laughs. And I thought about that for a long time, and I fully agree with him. And I know when I was younger, and I still have to fight against this now, but when I was younger, I would go out with these jokes. I knew exactly when I say what I wanted to do, and I would throw out the punchline, and it didn't get a laugh. And then I would do this kind of sheepish like smile and try to get people on board with me, even though my persona up until that point maybe wasn't this happily bubbly person. It was a bit more sardonic, a bit more sarcastic. And it's cheating for sure. But it also didn't feel good because you just got these sympathy laughs. And that to me is the worst kind of bombing. Now I prefer just, if I'm going to do a sarcastic person on stage, I'm going to do it. And if they don't like it, I would rather have like silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Than pity.
The idea of you trying to affect a bubbly, happy persona, I think, is an interesting thing I would like to see. It's like an
What do you
mean? Happy, yes. Bubbly, maybe. Jack, I feel like you had strong thoughts that were bubbling up.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's cheating. I think I think that's perfectly fine. I get how your references change, but like, and you can see that bombing because you're not doing as well as you normally do. But I do think if you try to crack a joke and it doesn't work, and then you do make a face or draw some attention to it and get a laugh, I think that's fine. I don't think that's bombing. Like for me, bombing and I think the worst kind of bombing is where you're actually going well and then you lose it. But like bombing for me is when there is a room that is responsive, that is happy, that's full of joy and full of laughter. And will I use a French phrase? What's that one that they have? Joie de vivre, right?
Joie de vivre.
Joie de vivre, and you take it away.
Tank it.
Yeah.
So, like I remember bombing where it felt like I had a superpower to just suck all the joy, energy, and life out of the room. Like that I had a magic wand, and it was almost like, if I could sell that to school teachers, like what I have changed the energy in the room, and everybody is looking at me like they hate me. You know what I mean? Like that for me, that's a bomb. Like saying stuff and them not laughing at your stuff, but they're giving you the laughs. You that means they still like you. Do you know what I mean? There's still some warmth in the room. You haven't. Do you know what I mean? Like, people who think that that's a bomb haven't seen a proper bomb.
Yeah,
you're like, if I fail, I will make sure you all have a horrible evening as well. I'm taking this whole ship down.
I'm taking the whole thing down with me. Yeah.
Especially that thing of like they liked everybody else, and you're so right, mate. There's a difference between I don't, maybe I'm not on board with the jokes, but I like you. You're okay.
Like,
but
it's not liking you. It's not liking, that's the bomb.
I completely agree. When you bomb and the vibe is nothing about you is redeeming. I don't like anything about you. Bring back the host. bring back the waiter, bring back anybody. I don't care, just as long as you get off stage.
And you've started well, so like you've gone from it going okay to it going like, so you've done something that's changed their mind.
Listen, I bombed last night after the show. The people were walking out. People were walking out, and this guy said, "Hey, I saw you in September," and I said, "Oh my gosh, did I get better?" And he goes, I said, "Well, you came back."
Was he French?
No, I think he might have been British. I don't remember actually, because I wrote him off after that comment. I was like, "Okay, sir, we're done."
Wow, a post-show bomb. That's
he'd make a good husband though, because he can't lie.
It's like you didn't need to bring attention to the fact, like you went into that being like, "Hey, I saw you." Like usually people are like, "Hey, I saw you. Oh my gosh, I love you. I came back to see you again." It's like, "Hey, I saw you. I wanted you to know that you have not gotten better."
Yeah,
you may have gotten worse.
I know what you mean though. It's like, fuck you. You brought the energy at this conversation. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't.
Yeah, but hang on. You asked the question. He didn't volunteer information.
No, he said he was walking out and he goes, "Hey, I saw you in September."
But you asked. But then you asked.
You asked. So
you
basically, it's, when you get the little hammer and you hit the leg and the leg moves, like it's not the person's fault that the leg moved.
What would you have said to him if he's like, "Hey, I saw you in September"?
I think when you ask people for feedback, when you go fishing for a compliment, you're always on the hook to get punished.
True.
Always.
Always. Yeah. So it's my fault.
Kind of your fault. Yeah.
The leg. We don't blame the leg. We're not leg blaming. So you're running the shows at the minute. What's like because the scene's expanding all the time.
Yeah.
What do you think the scene could look like in a year from now?
Yeah, great question. We've been debating on whether or not to have paid shows. And it's kind of hard to do that for tax reasons and everything. So, typical shows are in a bar, in a comedy club, but a very kind of low key comedy club. And it'll be free ticket, reserve on Eventbrite or on Billet Réduit, which is the French one. And then we just do a hat at the end and we split up the hat money among comedians. It's very chill. It's very accessible for a lot of people. We're toying with the idea of having paid seats. There are 2 shows in Paris that do paid seats, and that's because the venue takes the money there. It's a bit harder to pay the comedians that way, but I think that it would be kind of a step up in terms of notoriety, in terms of like, hey, this is going to be a showcase show. Like you're paying money, even if it's like €5, €3, it can be less than what you pay for a drink. People who come to comedy shows are primed to laugh, usually, except for that man who came last night. They are happy to buy a drink. They're happy to have a night out. So I think that they're happy to pay a small amount of money. We're trying to figure out the logistics of it. How do we do that when we don't own the club? Yep. How do we do that and pay the comedians? How do we do that legally? And that's the kind of next big step. Some people in the scene are like very much up for that conversation, and other people are like, no, free shows are the way to go. You're not on the hook for quality. Like people can complain, but at the end of the day, it's a free show. We like the hat money. I don't know. I think there is something to be said about making it a bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we can chat more over a petit vin rouge when I'm over.
Yeah, grand vin rouge.
And grand vin rouge and petit vin rouge. But I agree. I think even if it's like a marquee show, it doesn't have to be all the shows. But like, there might be like 1 or 2 marquee shows a month, right? That just denotes that there's a high, because that probably is the next level, right? For a lot of these European cities, is going from it's fun. There's some stand up in English to the quality of stand-up in English is noticeable at like 1 or 2.
I think right now we're like mid-level. We have shows that are considered showcases elsewhere. And so we need to build the top and the bottom. And the bottom would be open mics. We need a place where comics can test new jokes. So we have a bunch of open mics that are popping up now. And then we need to build the top where we need to have paid shows. Because right now, if you're an English-speaking comic in Paris and you're killing it every night, the next step for you is to do your 1 hour. And that's great. And I think that there should still be a place for that. But I think there needs to be another, like you said, marquee show where it's like a paid show where really talented comics who are here and who are traveling can come and do that spot. So just building out the kind of layers of it so that people can come onto the scene and kind of find their place and try different levels of the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's like the next step, the next thing. Because I find it interesting, right? Because I've chatted to some people that can remain nameless who are like, oh, it's really hard for big name British acts and American acts to crack Europe. But I mean, Jack, I'd love to know what you think of this. They do this thing where a promoter, like an agency, will come over and be like, stars of Live at the Apollo. And obviously no one in Paris knows what Live at the Apollo is.
Doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So arguably, you're better off being like Jack Hester, well-crafted Instagram, Facebook campaign. Here's some clips of Comedy Store. Here's some clips of me smashing it at gigs all around the world. Oh, great. He seems fantastic. I'll pay €5 to see that guy because he looks class.
Yeah.
It's probably a better approach than like Live at the Apollo.
To be honest, the approach is probably the approach you're taking, is that to gig in these places as you're rising, so that you're building your name there as well. I think that's the way to do it. Like, I think it's very, like, you have to get very big to be able to just parachute into a market you aren't part of.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Sell tickets. Like we saw it in Edinburgh, Tom. Like, there was plenty of people who seemed to have good credentials in America and other places, and they couldn't get anyone to see them.
Yeah, exactly. And you're so right. Your level of stardom has to be like huge.
Yeah, huge.
Not just like, he or she's a good club comic, or a headliner. Even it has to be like, you are transcendently famous to rock and just sell it with your name.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people. I'm actually going to LA next month because I want to see what the LA scene is like, having just gone to New York.
I cannot wait to see your opinion on the difference between LA and New York.
I'm all right. It was so hard to get shows in New York, and it's already been way easier to get shows in LA.
A friend of mine just got the late show with James Corden. He just did his first Gio Marcos, great comic, fantastic comic. And his Instagram post was amazing. He said, my girlfriend said I should be sincere. So I'd just like to thank all the comics in LA for making me feel relaxed about how good I was before doing the late show.
That's awesome. That's so great. Yeah, no, I'm super excited to see the difference of it. But I think you're absolutely right. You have to have a massive amount of followers, or you have to be a major headliner just to pop into any of those cities and get booked and do shows and do well. But the difference is, you can create a name for yourself in multiple cities in Europe pretty easily and on the cheap with all the flights and the accommodations over here. And you can develop your skills with a lot of different types of people. And then there's an argument for, like, a New York crowd isn't the same as an LA crowd, isn't the same as a Chicago crowd, but you still have a lot of American references that you can lean into. Yeah. So I don't think my goal is ever to have like millions of followers and be able to leverage that just to go back to America and like start. My goal is to really like cut my teeth here and get good enough to the point where I can go back and get decent shows, at least some paid shows over there in a couple years, and be able to not have to do the bringer gigs, the open mics, start from the very bottom and work my way up, because that, I think, is soul crushing. That's what I've heard from people. And I enjoy like a relative amount of admiration from my other like comic friends here. And like I said, it's easy to travel and do things elsewhere. So it's definitely like an easier route, I think, in my head, but who knows what's going to happen. Like, my plan could not work out at all. Who knows?
No, I think you're right. The idea of starting over in a scene is very, Jack, have you ever heard that Daniel Sloss talks about this quite a lot? He does this. I heard him talk about it recently on a podcast, but he's talked about it before. Because he's massive. He's arguably more famous in America than he is in the UK. I mean, he's big in the UK, but in America, he's like, you can mention his name and people are like, oh my God, Daniel Sloss.
Yeah.
And his reluctance to go to America for a long time was based on that. It was based on like, I don't want to go and do open mics in America. And it wasn't until it was the Conan O'Brien booker who got him over to be like, we'll get you on Conan, do some shows in LA, we'll get you the shows. Yeah. And once he'd done that, and once he'd been on Conan, every club in America was happy to have him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Adam Roll, he goes to America. Does he? I think he said he goes once a year or whatever. Like, so he can get kind of, the gigs won't be as big as what he'd be getting here, because he probably can't gig on his own name over there, but he get good gigs. But I think that's the way to do it. It's kind of like the bands like Radiohead and bands like that. They would have, when they were kind of coming up, they would have toured all around Europe, and they were building fan bases in all these cities as well. So by the time they got to do the big stadium gigs in the UK, they were doing those gigs in Barcelona as well and everything. But it wasn't that it looked like they had just got big in England and then gone to these things. But they did tour all those places as well, you know. So I think the way Sadra is doing it, where you pop over, so you're keeping your name there. That's kind of what I like to go to Liverpool once a year. Like, I just kind of, because you just want to keep on the radar.
Same as New York.
Yeah, even though I think I'm a long way off ever getting paid by them. Do you know what I mean?
You froze for me.
That's the Liverpool mafia. Just been like, we fucking chance, mate. We get no fucking here.
I'm gone, am I?
No, you're back.
You're back now.
Did I get cut off?
Yeah, we were just wondering if the Liverpool mafia jumped into your connection. And they were like, fuck off, mate. You're not fucking gigging here.
Speaking of the mafia, right? You see this picture behind you with the hands?
Yes.
Behind Tom?
That's
obviously not a photograph, is it?
No. We good eye. The kid, and it looks very much like a photograph. It looks like the child's hands were removed prior to the decapitation.
Evidence.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and this is the belt they were strangled with. It's actually, my sister used to love visiting my dad's office, and she used to play with a photocopier, and she would
photocopy in her hands.
Yeah,
it does look like there's a child trapped in your wall trying to get out.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that wall. It's a different wall.
Oh, of course. Yeah, you wouldn't.
House. It's through into
you wouldn't show this on camera.
Through the green room and into the barn. That's where all the bodies are.
That's where you keep the children.
Yeah. The smaller ones that fit in the small. It's more effective storage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And this is just that. This is just there to taunt them. This is a visual reminder.
You're like Hansel and Gretel, real life Hansel and Gretel.
Except with more gingerbread. There actually is fresh gingerbread down in the kitchen. My mum's been baking away. I think maybe like one last thing to wrap up on, just to get you guys both because I think it's interesting comedy at the minute, right? Like, you mentioned music there, Jack. I think musicians were so much more used to, for a longer time, like doing things themselves. And you pressed your own flyers, you pressed your own CDs back in the day, or your vinyl, you handed it out at gigs, you built a fan base very organically. And I think because we're all, there was two comedy booms, I guess, when we were kids or young adults, and this big infrastructure was set up with clubs and bookers and and the system in comedy became, you have to get passed at clubs before you can do anything else. And it's like an interesting time at the minute where, like, I think you still do want to do that. You still want to be good enough to do, Glee on a Saturday night comedy store. You should be good enough to do those places. That should be your goal, But in terms of like actually getting yourself out there, there's so many more ways to print your own flyers, get out there, book shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you had a list of all the people who are earning a living from comedy, I think half of them wouldn't have made it through the clubs.
Yeah.
I think the clubs are kind of they're considered the cool route. And it's sort of I guess it's do you know what the clubs are the kind of more how would I put it? It's the cooler, kind of maybe a bit more intellectual. It's the people who work in media, it's their preference. Do you know what I mean? But like someone who has someone who does little sketches on TikTok that sells out arena to and the majority of the people in the audience are on do basic jobs on minimum wage. Nobody who works in a media company is going to get excited about them and profile them and talk about how interesting their ideas are and this, that, and the other. But they still are a successful entertainer and comedian.
Yeah.
If it makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I definitely think there's different verticals, right? Like some people really want to do the club because that's their pinnacle, but some people are happy to like make a living on cruise ships. Some people want to get those TV gigs. Some people want to write TV shows. Like some people, I don't know. I don't think there's like one right way to succeed in it. Just like there's not one right way. I mean, there's a lot of things to do wrong, but there's not necessarily one right way to do comedy. You can have low energy comics, high energy comics, everything in between, with their own little quirks and their own niches and their own audiences. And, you know, I got into comedy pretty late, and I've been encouraged by comedians who I see who are in their 40s and their 50s, who are just sort of starting to have notoriety and become known around the world. And there's also, you know, there's no age to it. And comedy you should get to be a better comedian as you get older. Again, completely opposite from an athlete. If you're a ballerina and you're 32, you're done. Like sayonara, you know? But if you're a comedian and you're 32, wow, you have so many life experiences ahead of you, so many things that you can draw from, so many more things to write. So I think it just like your opportunities get better. And then, you know, the other thing I was thinking about recently is that in order to start comedy and to have the confidence to keep going, you need to do really well in really hard rooms. You need to bomb at open mics. You need to have the confidence to get back up there. But as you get better at it, it should get easier, but not just because you're getting better, but because you're able to book bigger rooms, and the ratio of success just increases. More people, more opportunities to laugh, right? So I think it's, again, one of those careers that you have to be I wouldn't say you have to be better when you start, because you should get better as you practice it, but you have to be so much more tenacious, and you can actually get a little bit lazier with it as you become more known and as you become better. Not saying that you should, but it's easier when you're more well known than it is when you're younger and you're playing in really hard rooms.
Yeah, I think one of the things with comedy too is I think it's one of the most accessible, creative things to do, because if you want to be an actor, you have to go to drama school. It's very expensive, right? If you want to be in a band now, it's very difficult to be in a band now. The cost and the expense, because nobody gives money up front anymore. No one gets record deals. Nobody comes along and says, lads, here's 10 grand, take a year off your job. Let's try make an album. You know, so I just think comedy it's easier financially to start than any of these other things. And I do. It definitely gets easier as you go along. Like the whole thing about you have to start on you say it in music, you have to start on the sawdust and spit circuit, and comedy same. Like, and I don't know what it's like in Paris, but I remember I still would now. But when you start, I went to parts of London to perform in like shitty little venues that I would never have dreamed of going anywhere near. And like I'm walking from the venue to the tube station going, shitting myself, going, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? I would never, no other invite. If someone invited me to their wedding, I'd be like, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. That's too dangerous. But like fucking microphone in the back room of a coffee shop. Fucking why not?
I'm there. Yeah, I feel you. I did a show in Brooklyn recently, and I showed it to my sister-in-law whose brother lives there. And she said, you're taking your life into your own hands by going into this neighborhood.
Yeah. That's mad. Like that thing about comedy, you just book it. And you don't really. You
don't care. It's a mic, like you said. Like, I'll get in there. I'll try to make people laugh.
Was
an addiction
that they were talking about?
It wasn't Tiny Cupboard. It was either a bar called Essence. I think it was a bar called Essence. And it was like slightly sketchy, but it was fine. I don't get freaked out about walking around in big cities late at night. Maybe I should.
No, I think ignorance is bliss in those situations.
Yeah, right.
Just
absolutely.
It's fine. This is fine. Totally cool.
Yeah, I was actually mugged once in Chicago, which is not a story for today, but I feel like I got my one in. I feel like it's kind of like lightning. Like, is it really going to happen again? Like, I had my one. I'm good.
Yeah.
And do you joke about it? Do you do a bit of, because mugging is I have a mugging bit. Like mugging is a staple for comedy.
Yeah, I have done it before. I need to rework it a little bit to make it punchier, but I've definitely done it before.
Yeah.
The short story here is that I fight or flight. I'm 100% fight.
Really?
And 100%. Yeah. I have zero flight in me. I wish I did. But when this happened, it was all in 1 second, and I bit the guy. And then I was with the police a few minutes later, driving around looking for him. And I said, "Can you look for my bite marks on his arm?" And that's how they found him. My bite marks were on his arm.
Oh my God.
That's class.
That's a short story.
That's also a great misdirect, because I don't know about you. I didn't see that coming.
No.
I didn't see him coming either. So, you know.
That's tremendous. Well,
yeah.
Unless anyone else has any burning things they want to get off their chest, that's like
really now.
No.
I could do some plugs. Can I do some plugs?
I was just going to ask.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it. Jump the gun.
Okay.
Plug away.
You can find me on Instagram at Sadra Sumner, Sumner is my last name. Sadra Sumner. Better if I start like that. I produce a weekly show called Cuckoo Comedy at Cuckoo Comedy on Instagram. Also starting 2 super exciting projects in 2023. One is called Europe Late. It will be on YouTube, and it is a Daily Show-esque news comedy hour. So Europe, like the continent, late, Europe late. And then also starting a podcast called What Was She Wearing, which you can find that on Instagram.
Very
Amazing.
good.
That's great.
Yeah.
And very excitingly, 2 weeks, a week? 2 weeks.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. You're going to be here.
We'll be together in
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah. We'll have to grab lunch one day before one of the shows.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. December 10th, Broadway Comedy Club, Broadway Comedy Cafe.
Broadway Comedy Cafe, British Indian Buddies, featuring us 3 and Ram. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah. Super excited about it. Yeah.
Wicked. This was a tremendous amount of fun. We'll pick it back up in Paris.
Perfect.
Cheers,
yeah.
Bye.
Tom and Jack having a crack. Tom and Jack having a crack.